name is Wojtek, I've just turned 29 years old. I want to share my story of the last several years and what brought me to faith. I do this for the glory of God. Starting with my family, I grew up in a single family home. Normal hard-working people, a typical Polish family. Pork chops and potatoes for dinner, alcohol for fun. If I were to ask my mother, I didn't cause any major problems. My grandmother definitely always said I was a quiet boy, and to this day she keeps telling me not to keep thoughts to myself. We didn't go on many trips, only once a year with my father to the seaside. Overall, I have fond memories of my childhood besides some issues. My grandfather on my father's side died when I was 3 years old, so I don't remember him at all. The fact that we lived with my grandmother, as you can imagine, sometimes could make things difficult in the relationship between her and my parents. Besides that, there was a significant alcohol problem at home and arguments about it. I never wanted to get involved, so I simply didn't speak up or acted like a jerk and kept things to myself. My sister and mostly my mother said I was selfish, uninterested in the house, and so on. We had arguments like any other siblings. I hope now it was just a misunderstanding. Generally, I always preferred to do my own thing and not constantly worry about other people's problems. That's why I distanced myself from my family, especially during larger events. My closest contact was with my cousins. We lived in a small house, we had chickens and rabbits, the latter one died. It's still unclear to me why, maybe from the air from the dump nearby. We also had dogs and cats. As children we spent a lot of time outdoors playing football and also in front of the TV, playing PlayStation games. It had its charm. My cousin and I lived in a close distance, so as kids we used to walk back and forth from his place to mine. With my grandmother, before her accident when she broke her leg, I sometimes went outside and picked apples for her, or did some simple chores in the garden or in the backyard, but I wasn't that much involved. About my father, I can say that he always made sure everything was paid for. He can cook and keep the yard tidy, he has a garden that he always takes care of. He likes American movies, especially those starring Mel Gibson. When I was little, we used to go to the rental store. I remember renting the first Shrek and breaking the disc, trying to get it out of the plastic wrapping. We only had the cassettes back then. After that, the owner replaced the disc with a new movie, told us not to worry and gave it to us as a gift at a lower price. About my mother, she had a drinking problem but does not longer, says it's thanks to God. She always cared about me and I couldn't say too much bad about her. Our whole family is very disciplined. It was same with her, never got late for work, always doing the chores at home. I was being fed, got breakfast and food for school every day, with clean clothes. She's just kinda bipolar, many times changing her mind and undecided, but we have a similar thing going in our whole family. I'm kinda the same at times. I respect and love my father as well with my whole heart. He worked as a postman his whole life to support our family, and he didn't expect much from me. Now I regret not spending more time with him, not trying to learn much from him. Maybe if I had more energy I would have approached things differently, but I never felt like doing anything. My dad always was and to this day is very disciplined and I admire this about him, but the alcohol caused many problems for him. From what my grandmother told me, he started drinking later. The whole family drank, which led to many tragedies. My father, after a rough patch, he had a serious accident where a woman drove into a neighbor he was coming back with, throwing him over the fence. I was only a few years old at that time. In 1991 as well there was an accident at home, which led to my uncle's death when he was 30 years old. It's tough to say, I'm sure he didn't mean any harm, but this happened because of my grandfather. From what I have been told, my grandmother didn't want to speak to him anymore, and he moved to a small house where a couple of years later he died of a cancer. Why am I telling you this? It's important for future events I'm about to tell. At about 20, I used to play a lot of games. One of them is this one called DayZ. You basically try to survive the zombie apocalypse and you got this huge terrain you explore where you meet random people. It's based on the area close to our country, Czech Republic. Back in 2015 I started creating videos and posting them on Reddit. For some reason they were getting a lot of attention. Even one of the producers at that time noticed me and started reposting videos on Twitter. I always liked making videos and telling stories. When the game came out, one of the videos got over 100,000 views. But at some point I wasn't feeling like continuing because I knew how much effort it takes and I still didn't have things figured out in life. Besides that, I was just doing regular stuff like watching movies, browsing the internet. I used to watch a lot of streams of this guy Rekfur. He was a huge inspiration for me to go and start traveling and meeting new people. I've seen his Japan streams, the ones from Europe and the US. He was always mentioning how much it helped with his mental being, at least for the time being, before he committed suicide, which was a shock. About myself, I always had trouble putting on weight. For many years I had this mucus in my body and trouble speaking. Rash on my whole body, I couldn't fall asleep when I was 6 or 7. As a teenager, I didn't particularly enjoy going out because I lacked the energy or enthusiasm. Always felt sluggish. In elementary school I had a few friends I visited, but over time fewer and fewer. I couldn't get out of bed because I was constantly cold, had headaches, eye pain and chills. Eventually at the age of 20 I was diagnosed with retinal detachment and I could lose my eyesight. I was all on my own, my parents didn't know how to help me. They later examined my other eye and also suggested laser treatment at the clinic because there was some degenerations. I decided against it, which was about 8 years ago. My mother's whole family has genetic problems. My sister was less fortunate. They operated on her eye and her vision will be impaired for the rest of her life. In 2018 I came across a Joe Rogan video. I found about this girl who went on the carnivore diet.
So your whole life you've had arthritis issues, or?
Yeah, so I started walking kind of funny when I was 2, according to my mom. And she brought me to the doctor and they said she's just having growing pains or something. But when I was 7, I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and I had like 37 joints affected.
The keto diet wasn't popular back then, but I gave up processed foods and sugar and a lot of problems have stopped. It didn't help completely, but as crazy as it sounds, at least I could remember the names of my colleagues at work. I've tried every single diet there is. Keto, carnivore, vegetarian, Mediterranean, you name it. I was buying a lot of meat. There's an online store in our country where they deliver it in thermal insulation boxes. But even though I was eating healthy, I wasn't feeling always better. From my perspective, not a single diet have helped. When I was eating too much meat, I would have more energy but be very sensitive and could not fall asleep. Vegetables only would make me feel dizzy. I went through the whole Dr. Berg's playlist. I was watching him live every single week. Not only him, but many other people. Dr. Axe, Josh Rubin, Bella Steak and Butter Girl, Dr. Paul Saladino, Dr. Ken Berry, and many more. Even though I'm still far from my best, what helped me the most was a combination of protein, fats and vegetables at a certain time of the day. But if you have stomach issues and toxins in your body, it's hard to digest, so you gotta eat slow, cook a lot of stuff, and generally be less stressed, at least from my experience, which was kinda difficult considering what happened, but more about this later. There will be some serious spiritual stuff. Church was probably only open on special occasions. I stopped going there completely when I was a teenager. I didn't go to university. My first job was at a customer service in this Dutch company that is based in Poland. I didn't have any experience, but eventually one of the guys, Marek, taught me everything. As the time went, I was responsible for invoicing, calling, coordinating the shipments to the customers, mailing and many others. Basically the whole customer service. We had the clients from all over Europe. I got the reference. I've been at the company for over 3 years. At some point we moved to a new city. One of our managers asked me once to do a video presentation of a new facility. They only handed me over this small GoPro camera and I went around and recorded and edited a video. Even though the manager for some reason didn't want this to get sent by me to the supervisors directly, I did it anyway. The boss was happy and they even wanted to continue. I was the youngest of everyone in the office. Generally, everyone treated each other with respect. There were some stupid situations and some backstage topics with management, but I tried to stay away from it. In 2020, the pandemic hit and sometimes I would have stayed at home. The work was getting overwhelming. I saw a video of someone saying that this is the best time to do business. There was a course on sale. I bought the course in a moment of excitement, but the next day I was wondering if I really needed it. Anyway, I went on a live chat and the guy says he has masks to sell and we can call hospitals, ask if they need them. I've sent an email to probably about 80 hospitals around Poland. A few months back, my manager at work asked me to send the Christmas postcards to the clients, so I came up with an idea to do the same here. Out of almost 100 emails, only one hospital sent a straight answer, contacted me that they wanted 3,000 of these. I couldn't believe it. I started a company, issued the invoice for the money I've received. I bought my first camera on Amazon. I didn't have any purpose, I was still posting videos and playing games, going to the office every day, listening to Joe Rogan podcasts. Marek, if I remember correctly, took the time off for the birth of his child. I remember those 2 weeks, I was completely beside myself because so much had been passed on to me. I couldn't expect help from anyone. I'm generally an emotional person, so this wasn't easier. The manager from the Netherlands was negotiating with one of the largest clients, but judging by the look on his face as I listened, it didn't look great. Around the same time, I went to Warsaw on a conference of this guy I mentioned earlier, who I sold masks for. Reminded him that it was me, and he asked me how am I doing, and when I said it's not that great, all of a sudden he said I can work for him. He handed me his notebook and told to write down my number. Here's where things started taking off. So I was doing e-commerce, managing 3 different stores for a guy that is very wealthy, to say the least. We had 50 different types of products on stock: sports gloves, beauty treatment devices, and a lot of car equipment. We are in contact almost 24/7 on WhatsApp. He promised there will always work at his place. 2 months before we started, I went to a confession after many years of not going to the church. After that, I told the priest that I feel something is watching over me. He gave me his number and I continued with the work. I familiarized myself with the accounts, prepared offers, and we made our first sales. I promised to even visit customers personally if necessary. We had this small cottage on the side of the house I mentioned earlier. When my grandma was living before we built the house, I started calling customers there, asking for their opinions and making notes for offers. In the October was also my birthday. Of the entire family except for my parents and grandmother, I remember only one cousin, a programmer, came over. We chatted for a while about how things were going. I told him I had quit my old job and was helping managing stores for an e-commerce business for a guy who does it for many years. I said I might need some help. Around that time I showed my grandma a video of the man I work with in the luxury car. She said he seemed decent. I remember standing in the yard one autumn afternoon. The sun was just coming out and I was telling my father straight out that I have a job with a millionaire. The guy seemed okay, he trusted me and we got off to a good start. I said I would cover the bills if needed, just needed a couple of more months until Christmas. My father is a postman, he always struggled a lot. We went into the cottage together, he lit the fire in the chimney and we exchanged a few words. Everything seemed to be going well until then. Shortly after that, in the middle of the month, strange things started happening. Now to the point of the film. I don't smoke, drink or use any substances. To put it bluntly, paranormal things started happening. All in a very short period of time. Problems with clients, arguments at home, and this is where it might sound absurd, but the reoccurring numbers. I call a priest, he literally tells me that he's locked up in Italy because of I cannot talk. I call my cousin, she tells me that she will come back after work. After she arrived, she said I had a manic episode. Soon after, the news spread throughout the family, who I work with. The cousin I spoke to before said I was working for a fraudster. My father suddenly started acting strangely again, yelling about the household bills, telling me to find a job. I showed him my paycheck and then he asked me about my insurance. He cares a lot about me, but this was something different. A notice arrived at our address that the electricity bill was due, and he knocked on my door as it were my fault. I walked around taking pictures the whole time, trying to do the work at the same time because I was working remotely. After that, even though my grandmother didn't know the man, she changed her mind, same with my father, told me to find myself a real job, only my mother stood behind me. A care from his company called me and said I was meddling in other people's affairs and that I should find a full-time job. My father invited some beer buddies to the cottage where I was talking to customers. I don't drink alcohol, but we had an argument. Actually, many of them. At the same time, I would wake up in the morning and have some inspiration for what to do. I can't explain it rationally, but that's how it was. I called the priest Roger, his name was, asking when he's available. He said he's still not back in Poland and he tells me, Wojtek, go to Sunday Mass. I didn't attend Mass regularly. I kind of ignored it at first, but I said I would go, what's the harm? I don't know what's going on. It was 24th of October, 2021. It's Mission Day. I'm standing at the back of the church and I start crying when I hear the gospel. 2 weeks after my birthday, I literally asked Grandma to write me stories from her life, because I don't know how long I'll be here and I might move to a different place. After a few days of reminders, Grandma writes me a letter about what happened at home 30 years ago. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to my employer. We are supposed to get started on Amazon, but I didn't do anything that day. One time long after midnight, I was debating whether to sit down and discuss it or just let it go and tell him what was happening at home. I did the latter in tears. I said I couldn't rely on anyone. Everyone was acting like they were in themselves. We talked for a bit and he said he would give me the money to move out in November. I said I would stay home with my family and that was probably the key moment. For the first time in years, I started praying in the morning. I've told my father I just needed time as the sales season at the end of the year was approaching. If it didn't work out, I would look for a full-time job. My father said they might as well turn off the power off. I don't know where he got that idea from, I think after seeing the bills. The next day the power was off all day. I remember the silence when I reminded him the day after what he said. My employer wrote me a message that it was the time to think things over. But since then I've seen things a bit differently. Something was trying to drive us apart. So I was messaging him everything that was happening at home. It sounds like a made up story, but it really wasn't. I was fully aware of everything. All Souls Day was approaching. You might know this as Halloween in the US. On November 1st, we go to the church and the cemetery. That's when I realized it's been exactly 30 years since my uncle had died. Now I will share a snippet of a testimony from a girl who says the same thing about her parents' anniversary. 7 years ago I found her first video and she talked about how much meat had hurt her. This is the girl I mentioned earlier.
Really, she had to get the cancer that nobody gets. The surgery didn't work the first time, and then she had surgery a second time, and then at some part through that experience she found God, and so she identifies as a Catholic at the moment. A lady started visiting her in the hospital, and they were praying together, and my mom's kind of demeanor changed. She was in the hospital, she wasn't eating, she was being fed through a tube, it was bad, and she goes, "I'll be better by our anniversary." And my parents' anniversary is mid-August. And on their anniversary, she recovered. And nobody understood why. "Oh, that's a weird day. And you said that was going to happen a month ago. And how is that possible?" And she was like, "God."
But the fact that it did occur on our 30th wedding anniversary, and that is what Tammy had said would happen.
Well, I pray the rosary every morning. On the odd morning, I don't if something else comes up. I received a rosary from my cousin after she found out I'd been ill, and it had been my great-grandmother's rosary. She was Polish, Catholic. I was raised Protestant, and that never stuck with me. I never continued to go to church. I left it.
There are no coincidences with God. Even though I could move out earlier, I went to my uncle's grave for All Saints' Day. I grabbed my camera and told my parents to take pictures of me because something was going on. And I was right. The power went out again. I was going to the church every Sunday and I started listening to the Gospels. I don't know how to explain it, but every single one resonated with me. This was for one of the weeks in November. Honestly, I ignored it at first, but I had a feeling there might be something to it. And after all this, let's keep it in mind. Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. At the time Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress, such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. First of the week, my employer messaged me he has a son. I don't know why I needed to know, but we communicated on everything. I said congrats to him and told him I'll be monitoring the orders. I shared the kitchen with my grandmother. I went in the morning and she said she couldn't find any lighters. The gas stove had some problems. I wondered if they might have fallen somewhere, but I couldn't find them. She said she tried to set it on fire with a newspaper, threw it away, and the ashes caught on fire. I grabbed the camera and recorded the whole thing.
Powiedz, co się stało po kolei.
Zaczęło się, podpalałam gaz i rzuciłam kawałek papieru. Nie zauważyłam, że on jeszcze tam tli. I jak rzuciłam do śmieci, zaczął się palić. No.
I zapalniczki nie ma, tak?
I nie ma zapalniczki. No. Teraz bym poszła do pokoju, jak nieraz pójdę się położę, to by się zapaliło, no bo tu jest przecież zaraz ta szafka.
Around the same week I had a nightmare. The words bewitch the body and the spirit. I always sleep well, but then I suddenly woke up. I started writing things down on my phone, that's why I still remember this. Saturday has arrived, my employer calls me. He writes me a wall of text telling me what needs to be done. I went into Grandma's kitchen and she seemed to be trying to light the gas with a newspaper again. I said I'd get a lighter from upstairs. Now with these thoughts and nerves running through my head, I went into my parents' second kitchen and it was covered in smoke. I panicked because I thought the gas had leaked and I started running around the house, opening windows. I rushed at my father crying. He told me he was only frying lard and that caused the smoke. I remember my grandmother looking at me as if I were sick, asking Wojtek what happened. It was 12 p.m. at noon. I went outside to the store to take a break. After I went back home, I locked myself in the room making offers for the store we were managing. My employer told me he wanted to talk at 3 p.m. today. We hopped on Skype and I'm telling him strange things were happening at home. He said he didn't want to hear about my family again if I had anything more to say. I didn't speak a word. At one point I said bluntly that the house would caught on fire. We hung up and a moment later he texted me saying we were done. I only remember the look on my mother's face as she cleaned the room, asking me what I was going to do after all this. It was Sunday, I was already keep going to the church every week, and a thought came to my mind to write one last time, saying I was available if he changed his mind. He told me it'd be fine, we'd get back to working together, but at 8 a.m. he wants to see the reports on what I had done. A couple of days later I am about to send a report. 4 minutes later the power went off in the whole house. I started walking around with my phone recording.
Nagrywam to, żebyś mi uwierzył, że nie zmyślam. Jest godzina za 10:09 w tym momencie. No i nie ma światła, tak? Od razu jak do mnie zadzwoniłeś.
A few hours passed. At 12 p.m. the light came back on. I go to my grandmother. She said the clock was beeping. I said it was the refrigerator. We were arguing for a minute. I grabbed my phone and recorded it.
Szedłem do pokoju. Godzina 8 wysiadł prąd, od tego zacznijmy, tak?
No.
Tak, babcia? Kojarzysz?
Tak, Wojtek.
No ale sobie nie zmyśliłem. Szedłem do kuchni i mi mówisz...
piszczyć lodówkę.
Nie, i powiedziałaś, że zegarek piszczy,
Że
tak?
zegarek.
A zegarek stał tutaj. Kiedy on piszczy w taki sposób?
On nigdy nie piszczał w ogóle, od tego się
No właśnie, od tego zacznijmy,
od
tak?
tego się
I myślałaś, że piszczy zegarek, tak? A
tak.
piszczała lodówka, a lodówka jest z boku i ewidentnie słychać ją. Pokazałem ci zegarek, ja bym ci pokazałem ci wprost. Teraz to już tego nie udowodnię, ale pokazałem ci wprost ten zegarek i ty mi patrzyłaś się w oczy i mówiłaś, że piszczy dalej zegarek. Doskonale to
No
słyszałem.
tak, bo
Tak
tak
powiedziałaś.
mi się
No,
wydawało.
no tak ci się wydawało.
Mi się wydawało.
No, ale tak było. Tak było.
Tak było.
No to tyle możemy ustalić. Tak było.
A i jak wyłączyłeś też piszczy?
Na razie nie wyłączałem, tak? Ale chyba
Jak dasz
wyłączę.
radę, i później nie włączysz. Zostaw,
Ale jak się wszystko rozłoży...
Wojtek, zostaw, na razie możesz się włączyć.
I lived in that house for 25 years. Nothing like it ever happened. My grandmother has a sharp mind. The neighbors had electricity. No one wanted to acknowledge what was going on in that house. Even when I once went to my older cousin's house at night, I said, come with me for a moment, you will see what's going on. It would take them 10 minutes, but they don't want to take responsibility because it means change. I'm a very sensitive person, so I often blew up, but I was always under heaven's protection, that's the truth. At that time I also went into my sister's room and found these photos. The girl that I work with said she was going to her grandfather's funeral. I said to her my grandfather on my mother's side was still alive, so I should probably start visiting him more often. I still remember his words. I told him what was happening around. When he could still speak, he asked if everyone thought I was naive. He asked again if my employer paid me, if he wanted me. I said yes, which he said after that to not worry about other people's opinion. At that point I tried my best to listen to everyone and only then draw conclusions. My grandfather told me that when he works, his boss would have taken photos of his work and show them to others. It inspired me to do the same, which is why I still have these photos. I was seeing the numbers everywhere and on license plates as well. I don't know what's up with that to this day. At the end of November I made a hasty decision to move out after 25 years. I simply looked at my job results and I knew I could do better. But I was still living at home. At least I did what I could and stayed a little longer. My mom didn't mind, she helped me a little. One thing I remember is saying that no matter what, I would keep in touch with everyone. At that point I think I was praying every day. I could have been offended, but it felt like some people were not themselves. I was at the new place by myself, had some time to rest. I was calling my parents constantly and I started telling my father about confession. Even out of fear, I started doing things according to the sermon. On December 5th, 2021, my mother sent me the message to bring the tissues to the church before I go to Mass. I'm going to the Mass and this man comes out.
I decided to organize my life my own way. I stopped going to Mass, stopped confessing, stopped praying, and the end result was that I completely erased God from my life for 30 years. And suddenly, from one day to the next, as if someone had first prepared a script and said, "Let's begin." Like a house of cards, everything started to fall apart. By morning, I had changed my mind. I wanted to live, and in the evening, after 30 years of mockery, I went to confession. An extraordinary thing happened at the very end when the priest, while pronouncing the absolution formula, made the sign of the Holy Cross over me. I physically felt as if some chains binding me were breaking. Thank God we can travel all over Poland. We've already visited over 320 parishes. And you know what? In many places where we've been, currently less than 10% of baptized Catholics attend Sunday Mass, and there are no young people. This is a set that includes not only the treatise itself, but also a booklet about the Rosary, and each set comes with a bookmark. At the bottom, on a red strip, there's the website address. There you'll find a 3-day retreat on the topic, as well as my testimony. If any of you, for any reason, don't have the money, but would like to try, please approach my colleague, who will be in front of the church after the Mass. We'll give it to you as a gift. Dear ones, because this is not about money at all. This is about eternity.
I burst into tears, couldn't control myself for half the Mass, shaking all over. A young woman came towards me and gave me a pack of tissues. I threw in the money, told him I would take the book and needed to talk for a moment. It's cold outside and I'm all shaken like a scene from a movie, as if he was prepared for it. I didn't even have to explain anything. The man tells me to go to confession and gives me his contact information. I'll just say this man's faith blew me away. We stood outside the church in the freezing cold. He came out to me again during the second Mass and there was a moment of Eucharist. He got on his knees outside, even though there was no people around and we could barely hear what's inside. I did the same because I was too embarrassed to stand. I returned to my apartment and still saw the clients' numbers on orders, one after another, even though I was attending the Mass and then went to confession. Ultimately it wasn't much better, but at least the lights stayed on and I could work in silence. Before Christmas, my employer calls me and says the tax office will be contacting me to ask a few questions. They are calling from the office asking if I work for this person because my information was there on the invoice. At first I hesitated, then said yes, and then I was informed that a letter would be sent to me regarding a court case, which I had to return within a week. My heart started pounding and I began to doubt whether I could actually be deceived, what interest he would have in deceiving me. That's when I was convinced that God had placed me here for a purpose and I got nothing to lose. It was basically like someone had written a script, constantly testing whether we could trust each other. My house rent was supposed to be extended at that time and I was having doubts, again, about whether I should stay as I was living month by month. The landlord came up with his accountant and I was wondering what to do next. I said I would end up staying there for 3 more months. I don't want to ramble on, but it was such a rush of inspiration and fear that I started writing a presentation about what happened. I sat in front of the computer for a few hours, wanting to play the man's testimony. I grabbed my laptop and my mom just put on my cross necklace, which I still have. I was going to visit my family and I wanted to say something. At one point someone said I almost ruined Christmas Eve, so I finally just sat there. Overall it was a pleasant experience. I asked if anyone wanted to go to the midnight mass. I had never been. No one wanted to, and one of my aunts was going to another parish with her family, but I said I would go to ours alone. I returned to my apartment. I know how this sounds, but the orders were coming in just enough for me to manage. But it also tested our approach to customers, whether we were telling the truth. Negative reviews would come in every now and then. I checked addresses in case I might have to visit a client. They were always far away on the Polish border. I'm not even kidding. At the end of the year, the client had a problem with his dashcam. We are selling this. I told my employer I would take the chain and go to him. Maybe visiting a man I met at the church as he was on the way. I hopped on the train on my way to find this man. In just a couple of days' time, 2 men invited me to their houses after I arrived. Don't ask me how. Both of them were living alone and their wives had died recently. The first one was a fisherman, Richard. We sat down on a New Year's Eve. I started telling him about the church and me returning to the faith. He said that his wife was more into it, but listened to what I had to say anyway. Told me about his fishing trips. He was struggling a lot after losing his wife. I tried to cheer him up a little. He showed me his room where I could sleep. I found this book from a priest there, how we should take care of ourselves. It was all scratched out and underlined by his wife. Next day I asked him if I could take it. While I was looking for a cafe, a random married couple approached me. We went into a restaurant together and they paid for the food, which was very nice of them. I didn't meet the guy I was hoping to see, but a day later I arrived to this beautiful town close to the mountains when I wanted to take a break. Another man approached me and invited to his house. What happened next was mind-blowing. He showed me the recordings from Israel 30 years ago where he was living there for a couple of years in Tel Aviv. He went in and he showed me his workshop, his guitar. He had an old record player, a motorcycle, a separate storage room, everything neat and tidy. He put on a record for a moment and we went into the bathroom, where he told me he would lay the tires himself. We went upstairs and there was a collection of pipes on the wall. He then pulled out an album and started showing me his old photos from Israel. He said he also had some videos. I still can't believe it to this day. I just listened and took pictures. He let me sleep in the next room, where I understand his wife was before. I went back to where I lived. It was on the other side of the Poland. 6 to 7 hours drive back. To make it quick, I worked for another half a year. At the beginning of the year we celebrate Three Kings Day. Sometimes I would go outside and have a walk, but I'd rather stay at home when it's cold. Soon after, at work, more miracles happened. We had necklaces from Dubai and books for sale. We had unlimited budget on the ads. I had to look at all analytics. Sometimes the orders would have randomly stopped or slowed down without a reason. Things in his company started taking wrong turn. The girl who wanted me to leave eventually had some problems, wasn't doing her work, and he fired her after 15 or so years. I didn't know the exact details, but I tried to contact her. It turned out she was having problems at home and stopped sending books just before Valentine's Day. Book sales were always going great, but after the fact they suddenly slowed down. I can't explain it rationally, but it went from selling several a day to selling just a couple. 2 or 3 days before Valentine's Day, the books were finally sent back to us, but when we resumed the auction, I think it was too late to sell. The girl said it was a misunderstanding. It was the same one who had previously wished me to leave the job. I know one thing, at that time I couldn't react. It was better to stay quiet. I treated it as a test. I'm convinced we'll be held accountable for our actions. I don't know where this idea came from, but eventually I called her and asked if we could meet to discuss what had happened. I went to Warsaw and turned out we met at a Christian community. I told her the situation from my perspective, but she said there had been a misunderstanding and she genuinely thought I was interfering. I started talking to her a bit about faith. She was with her husband and children. She didn't have much time. The power in my family's house went out permanently. I don't know why at this particular time, apparently only ours was down. My father plugged in a generator. I said thanks to God I moved out because I wouldn't have been able to handle the noise outside my window. Around that time I visited Jasna Góra church for the first time. It's one of the biggest sanctuaries in the whole country. I'm doing it once a year now for 25th of March. Around the same time my uncle also helped me a bit with a product we have. He drove around doing the recording of a dashcam. We had it on stock, I recorded a few videos of it. I was keep calling this man hoping he would explain what had happened. We had a few talks through the phone. Once on my way to him I got lost with some random guys south of Poland, but that's another story. I visited Wojtek again in the mountains when he showed me his recordings from Jerusalem. He told me a story how he got into a tomb there and the camera randomly stopped. Told this to his friend, they couldn't believe it. This was 30 years ago. After more than a year, I finally met up with this man I mentioned before. A few minutes before I saw the numbers again on license plates at the bus station. We spoke for a bit while I bought the books from him. I gave this to some of the people I know, including Wojtek, the man in the mountains. Towards the end, this was 16th of June, the day of Corpus Christi. Everything literally stopped with the numbers, which I was seeing all the time. I've managed to raise the store to 200 positive reviews, but apparently the income wasn't sustainable anymore. In the end, we parted ways. I've been trying my best to manage the stores to keep the store ratings high. I was responsible for the product descriptions, photos, customer service and more. I was keep going to the church every week. I wasn't afraid of speaking up about the faith, told him about praying the rosary and who I met. The thing with him I'm pretty sure is that he knew but chose another way, willingly. He read my messages but never responded. Same month he called me saying he saw the product in Dubai and suggested to go around restaurants, ask if people want to buy it. Instead I went all around Poland. I have the whole recording. This year, 2025, I started posting this on social media and it received some attention. I went back to my family's home. Nothing really happened after besides the fact that my grandma changed. She's almost 86 years old now but more cheerful than before. To this day, me and my mother are the only ones who noticed. I read the whole New Testament with her. I'm still not sure if I have done enough because I moved like a year ago to Wrocław. I had to just take care of myself now. The things I saw will stick with me for the rest of my life. I didn't want to work in e-commerce anymore but went to this guy's conference again a few months later just to see what happens. Before I entered, I noticed the car with the numbers again. During the break he asked everyone to leave. There was about 20 people, but after they left I was just standing one-on-one with him and told him that everything was going according to the Bible and I can't explain what had happened. He just looked at me and said that now after I know how it works, I can manage my own store. I told him I'll be doing video editing instead. I was keep looking for the job. My first employer actually had called me all of a sudden. He needed a company presentation which I made for him. I also got along with a guy from conference who was doing some apartment renovation. He posted a few videos on TikTok and it got a few 100,000 views, but he couldn't continue. Then I've done another presentation for this company who even worked with NASA. After they paid me I gave them the rosary and they accepted this very well. The guy Richard I mentioned earlier that invited me had a heart attack and had died. His daughter informed me when I was trying to call. I had to do something, went to Wojtek, the guy with the birds, and told him I will pray the rosary for his health. He looked at me and said, "Is this supposed to help?" The same night he had breathing problems, called up the ambulance. A month later he said that the prayer might have helped.
Panie Wojtku, mam różaniec, przywiozłem je, bo... A po co? No ja panu go dam, no mam go w szufladzie. Ja przecież nie umiem się modlić z różańca.
No dobra, no.
Wyciągasz ten różaniec, ja się za pana pomodlę o zdrowie.
To tak było, no tak było.
Uklękłeś tutaj i klepiesz tą paciorkę. Ja sobie się tego Wojtka już całkiem strzeliłem. Ja tak stoję i się patrzę, jak później on tam skończył, ja mówię co, i to ma pomóc.
No tak było, tak było.
No, wiesz, olałem tą sprawę, trzeba lekarza albo coś. Po twoim wyjściu za 7 godzin już leżałem w szpitalu. Spuścili ze mnie 12 litrów wody i spadłem na wadze 7 kg. Ale mi się polepszyło, zrobili mi wszelkie badania i prześwietlenie, i krew, mocz i sobie myślę, może to Wojtek wymodlił, czy to przypadek, czy to co to?
He was by himself, decided to go to a nursing home. Soon after he passed away, over there. I went to his grave and noticed that he had the same date of birthday as me. This was shocking. I got in contact with a guy on Facebook who was doing marketing for personal trainers. I decided to help him as I still didn't have a job. Long story short, we met in person a couple of times. He said I'll be able to pay my rent no problem. I was helping him managing the YouTube channel, done many of reels, a few hundred video campaigns for personal trainers all over country. In the end I was still barely able to live off of it. I learned a lot and I'm thankful to him, but this was another disappointment. But that's maybe how it's supposed to be. I guess it was to teach me something. During that time I noticed an email from Iman Ghazi about Digital Launchpad. I decided to join there and it was worth it. I met a lot of people there. I helped this other dude from Miami generate 400 leads for his client, but apparently the client didn't close any because didn't know how to sell and forgot to call the clients right away, so everything is possible. I also bought 30 rosaries and went on a tour around Europe. Gave them away to some people. Some people from DDL I met in person and spoke about faith as well. I will probably create a separate video on this. Around the same time I looked in the opportunities section and found this guy who started a marketing agency. I sent him one of the presentations I've made. We worked until today and had some amazing results, but it has taken us nearly a year. All of the years I've spent brought me here by the grace of God, of course. The things I saw, guys, this is the only way to go. I'm telling this to everyone. This guy talks about consecration to the Virgin Mary. I'll be probably doing the same for the rest of my life. I'm not ashamed of my faith. I was keep delaying this for years now, but finally recorded a video. I would like this channel to cover traveling, adventures, meeting other people and faith-related topics, but we'll see how it goes. I still have some health-related issues which I would like to resolve. I found this girl who treats people literally with God's diet. She had been given 3 months to live by the doctor, has a rare disease, but managed to figure out how to help herself, and now after 10 years since the diagnosis helps other people detoxing with the diet. I went for a consultation with her. She recently reminded me that the body produces mucus to protect tissues, which causes problems with body temperature. Generally, mucus can cause congestion in the veins, sinus problems, oxygen problems and much more. I was living with this for most of my life. Even the tap water creates problems, but that's a whole other discussion. Instead of handing out candy, go pray for your loved ones. At least that's what I'm doing. I'm coming back home. See you in another video and God bless.